Alrighty, Jonathan Acosta here in the Channel 2 studios, talking here with our Bills insider, Vic Carucci, as we look ahead to the Bills game at the Commanders this Sunday. Vic, let's jump right into it. I want to start off with the Bills offense. Obviously, a lot of talk about Josh Allen's turnovers after that loss against the Jets. A complete 180 against the Raiders. He took care of the football, was efficient, passed for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. Do you think that win against the Raiders provided a template for the Bills, not just against the Commanders, but the rest of the season?
It's possible. Now, game plans vary like so many other things from game to game. You really can't count on things staying the same and all the variables with injuries and matchups and so forth. But the version of Josh Allen that we saw against the Raiders really, I think, is the best version of Josh because he was composed and in command and really saw, I think, the game in a way that he should have really in the first game and should have in most of his games. Let it come to him and emphasize balance, spread the ball around. Don't be afraid to throw it underneath and let the receiver gain some yards. Don't always look for that big chunk play and force it. We saw that too many times against the Jets. And when we see that from Josh Allen, that's when we see the bad Josh Allen.
For the second time in 3 weeks, we're going to see the Bills go up against a very formidable defensive line. The Jets gave them issues. Washington's defensive line is a group that Allen called this week one of, if not the best in the NFL. With the defensive line that can get after the quarterback like that, does that place added importance on Allen maybe getting the ball out quickly this week?
I think there are a couple of thoughts in facing this defensive front. One is Allen being able to make those quick throws and being aware of where everything is. And number two, I think the balance of the passing game itself can be a factor because when that D line is coming at him, obviously it has a better chance to sack him when he's waiting for the longer throws to develop than those quicker throws or, those screens and so forth. And I think a game plan that has that built in will give him a better opportunity. But another thing to look at is his running ability, because when that pass rush is coming full force, usually there is man coverage behind it, and that opens up a lot of green for him to attack with his legs. That can help keep that defense honest. Another factor is the run game, turning that up and being consistent with that as they were against the Raiders, a huge factor when you're trying to slow down a great pass rush.
For the offensive line, just how much of a challenge is it going to be against this defensive line that, correct me if I'm wrong, it has 4 first-round picks on that unit?
Yeah, I think the offensive line for the Bills played as good a game as it has in a long time against the Raiders. And it was a case of winning a lot of one-on-one battles. It really wasn't any clever scheming that came into play there. They just showed up and they were consistent in making the proper blocks, not only in pass protection, holding up well there, but opening up the holes for the run game. And Spencer Brown, I think, started to show how much he can come into his own. It has been a matter of confidence with him, just believing that he can do the things he is being taught to do by Aaron Kromer. He's got an outstanding O-line coach, and if he just applies it and believes he can do it, he'll have success. We saw that against the Raiders, and I also think the guards played an outstanding game as well, showing great power on the inside. Osiris Torrance, for one, not showing any sense of being overwhelmed by being a rookie in the National Football League.
You mentioned the run game in one of your earlier answers. What did you like about what the Bills did in the run game against the Raiders? And how could we maybe see those 3 running backs? It really felt like all of their skill sets were used. Could we see that again against Washington on Sunday?
I thought in so many ways it was a brilliantly designed run scheme by Ken Dorsey because you had the variety. Of course, you have James Cook's explosiveness, and he's the main hitter. And when you get him going, then you do the change-up thing with Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, where there is more power to what they bring to the table, and it keeps the defense sort of guessing as to what's going to be there. And then there is the play action, which of course comes more effectively when you have obviously an effective run game that the defense believes is going to be part of your attack. And the problem that the Bills have had in some games is too much reliance on throwing the football, and the opponent just doesn't believe it's going to have to worry about the run. Well, I think that Raider game showed to a large extent how much an opponent has to worry about the run and how many different ways that running attack can be effective.
Looking at the other side of the ball, Washington on offense, Sam Howell at quarterback, not a whole ton of experience, but he had a big arm coming out of college, led an explosive offense at North Carolina, and he's showing off that big arm at the NFL level. Just when you've watched him, what have you seen out of him, and what challenges could he pose for this Buffalo defense, especially his ability to maybe push the ball down the field?
I still see a very young quarterback in Sam Howell, made only his third start last week against the Broncos. So there is much more for him to grow and learn as a QB. And I think in that process, that should be an advantage for the Bills defense, for sure, to not let him get into any groove. Yes, I think he can test the secondary with the big arm, those deep balls, and Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, that whole secondary is going to have to be on its toes, Christian Benford, to hold up, because they will attack and challenge downfield and try to keep pace, knowing that it's an offense they're facing that is also one of the most explosive in the NFL. The other thing, of course, is rattle him with the pass rush. We saw Greg Rousseau and company have as good a game as we've seen from them in a while. Ed Oliver and AJ Epinesa. You still have to play at that level to show a Sam Howell, or at least keep Sam Howell worried about the kind of pressure he's going to face, and more concerned about that than finding those deeper targets. And when you're going deep, you're taking your time in the pocket, that creates sack opportunities.
I want to go off of that because Sean McDermott, since he's taken over the defensive play calling, one of the characteristics has maybe been being a little more aggressive with the blitzes and stuff like that. And we've seen that be something that's hard to handle sometimes for young quarterbacks. Do you think that's something where McDermott's kind of touch on this defense plays a factor against Howell's inexperience?
It isn't only the blitzing that has been the aggressive part of Sean McDermott's scheme. There have been stunts and games and all kinds of movement within that defensive front that allows those players to get into favorable matchups with the offensive line. Also, the coverage and really allowing those corners to rely on their skills to hold their coverages long enough to allow the pressure to get to the quarterback.
The Bills have faced two good wide receivers the past couple of weeks: Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams. Terry McLaurin might be one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League. What have you seen out of him, and just what kind of challenges do you think he presents to the Bills secondary on Sunday?
I think McLaurin's definitely going to get some big plays. He will always probably make one or two in a game, and it's possible to prevent them, but I would say that the Bills would likely do that. And then the key, though, is not let that become something bigger and multiply into bigger plays by other people because of the attention on McLaurin. It goes back to Sam Howell. It goes back to getting him feeling uncomfortable in the pocket and not allowing him to really set his feet well, or if they can get him on the ground, just prevent that ability to make those bigger throws. But it'll also be not just on the corners, but the safeties to prevent those deep shots. With this defensive approach by McDermott, it isn't just protect the back end at all costs and let everything happen in front. It is a team that doesn't want to now defensively allow big plays to materialize wherever they are. So it will be interesting to see how they either bracket him or put coverage on him in a way that minimizes the kind of damage that he'll do, but he'll probably do some damage.
Howell, though, gets the benefit of having a pretty good running game with him. Brian Robinson, the running back out of Alabama, I think he had 87 yards last week. we saw the Bills hunker down against the run game last week against the Raiders. They held Josh Jacobs to negative rushing yards. How much of an importance is that for the Bills defense this week, making sure that and making life tougher for Howell, they don't let the run game go in either?
I think they have to be as stout against the run, every bit as stout against the run as they were against the Raiders. Now, are you going to be able to have a back like Josh Jacobs held to negative 2 yards on 9 carries every week? Probably not. But it is important to not let them gain any level of momentum in moving the football on the ground, because again, their approach would likely be to deflate the football as much as possible and keep Josh Allen and that offense off the field as much as possible, because the Commanders defense has had some issues here. Now, as impressive as that front is, this is still a defense that gave up huge, long touchdown drives against the Broncos and had to rely on 2 turnovers in each of its 2 wins this year to win games. I mean, it was a turnover, a strip sack of Russell Wilson that ignited a comeback that allowed them to, and then hang on against the Broncos. So this is a team that lives dangerously. For as well as their offense has played, they are not a team that so far has shown it can put an opponent away. But if you get a run game going, which the Commanders are going to try to do, that is probably the best avenue to taking control of a game and then forcing the other team to become impatient. And that's when you worry about Josh Allen. If the other team is holding the football for a long time, long plodding drives, and he's on the sidelines watching and itching to get out there, that's, those moments are when he can come in there and probably try to do too much.
We talked about Sean McDermott, the defensive play caller, earlier. As a head coach, he's about to coach in his 100th game. His mentor, Ron Rivera, just won his 100th game. Just from your time covering this league, just what do you know about that relationship, maybe the influence of Rivera on McDermott, and just what is your take on the success both of them have had in the NFL?
The relationship between Sean McDermott and Ron Rivera goes back to their days with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they became pretty close there. And of course, learning under Andy Reid, as good as it gets from a coaching standpoint. And I think the respect that they have for each other has grown since then, to the point where Ron Rivera gave McDermott obviously a very big break to make him the defensive coordinator in Carolina after he was let go by the Eagles. That is a career turning point for McDermott, and he'll, I'm sure, acknowledge that. And to have the chance to build his resume with the Panthers to the point where he got the head coaching job with the Bills, it's incredible. And they know each other's tendencies quite a bit. Competitively, that can factor into things. Much of what Sean has done in establishing his program with the Bills is patterned after what he learned when Ron Rivera was the head coach with Sean as the defensive coordinator in Carolina. And so you have to believe that there is some of that inside knowledge that each of them has with each other. And in terms of style of play, and especially when it comes to the defensive philosophy, because that's where both are rooted as coaches, that I think is something that's interesting to watch. But more than anything, it's respect. And I think when it's all said and done, whatever the outcome, you have, a student and a teacher together, and Sean McDermott feels, I think, emotionally a whole lot from that.
Bills Commanders, 1:00 kickoff on Sunday. Stay tuned on Monday night for Sports Talk Live Buffalo, where Vic will join our sports director, Adam Benini, to talk about everything from the Bills and probably a little bit Sabres training camp as well. Vic, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
All right, Jonathan.